Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tech Show. Oh man, it's been a while. It's been a while. I think we did this last year back in the summer. And during that time, we said, you know what? We're going to make this an actual podcast. Then, stuff happens. Then we practically said, actually, let's pause on that for a second. But again, we're back in the summer again. We said this time we're going to actually take this serious and we're going to commit to actually putting this to action in terms of going live consistently. So, again, welcome to the Tech Show, a tech podcast with myself, Joel Asante, a solutions architect at AWS, and my other colleagues here who I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Dineski.
Yes, thank you, Joel. Like Joel said, I'm also a solutions architect at AWS, and I'm pretty hyped to be here with you guys and help you understand a little bit more about technology. I'm going to pass it on to Evans.
Hi everyone, I'm excited to be here. My name is Ivan Sidon. I'm also a solution architect at AWS. Um, Happy to join you guys here, decode about GenAI, talk about tech.
Thank you, Evans. My name is Azuddin Mohammed. I'm also a solutions architect like Dineski, Joel, and Evans. Work with AWS. I've been with the company for 3 years, and I have some experience in the public sector. So I'm really excited to be a part of this podcast and give you a little bit of some of my experiences as well. So very excited to be in this podcast.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys for giving us that introduction here. Um, I think last year when we had initially done this, the goal of this was to, again, like we said, in my introduction and you guys' introduction, is to share our perspective in terms of the world we see, especially in technology, but also other spaces too as well. But obviously, our perspectives are going to come into this as a perspective of a solutions architect, a solutions engineer, or just in general a technologist at heart, right? We here love technology, and I can obviously not speak for everyone here on the call. I know at heart these guys that I've worked with for the past couple of years, love technology. Uh, I think today what we're going to do is we're going to cover a very interesting topic, I would say. We see this topic all over the place, whether it's in summits, YouTube videos, conferences, and advertisement, you name it, everywhere. This topic obviously is generative AI or Gen AI for short. Uh, we've seen this in our own day-to-day work we do for our customers, but also the work we do to make our life more productive. Uh, so we're going to be covering that topic today and discussing what we advise in terms of solutions, but also what we see in the industry as a trend. So quickly, for the folks that are on the call here that don't know much about Gen AI, what is generative AI and what is it? And why do people always want to actually utilize it or implement it or just even talk about it like it's some sort of like a sports team or whatever, right? Uh, the key definition of generative AI is the artificial intelligence system that makes it capable for individuals to create new content. These content can be you generating text, images, code, music, and even more, to be honest, right? Uh, the sky's the limit. These systems are built on patterns and structures from existing data. So you hear all these big, large language models, which we're going to talk about what that is in a second. You see all these large language models being trained by billions of parameters, right? That's how we're able to create and produce these novel and extremely insane outputs that we see nowadays. Like I said, I mentioned some key terms here, like LLMs. What are them, right? Usually, you can think of LLMs as a GPT or generative pre-trained transformer, and these are the things that you see from OpenAI, from Claude, which is by Anthropic, and so many others. Right? I'm not going to bore you with the details of what they are. I think the folks here want to get straight into how did this came about and why is this so relevant in our space today? Why is it so relevant in our society today? Well, it's so relevant because one, the history of it began as when we all started utilizing simple for loops in our computer code, right? For loops, you can create simple machine learning architecture where you say, if this is not this, you produce that. If it's this, then you produce this, right? That gives you some sort of like a way to tell the machine to give you an output based off the if and else statement. Over time, obviously, there's changes, and that obviously became your chat GPTs, your Midjourney, your Copilot, your Dolly, and your cloud platforms that are offering like you the accessibility to the different models over there. But we're gonna make this conversational here, where I bring in my colleagues here to discuss what they see in the space in terms of one, how this, I would say, technology is impacting the different industries that we have in our society, but also the impact that it's making in our society, whether it's the ethical side of stuff and how we have to be responsible when utilizing it, but also we have to also look at the security aspect of the things we utilize when it comes to generative AI and how easily accessible it is to us and how sometimes it can be misused. We're going to be discussing a bunch of stuff. If you have any questions, again, feel free to throw it into the chat here. We're here to answer those questions. We're looking to make this as conversational as possible. So giving us those questions helps us give you the right answer to make you get started on your journey if you're looking to get started. So the first question I think I'm going to have my colleagues here answer is, how do you see Gen AI being integrated in the various industries in different sectors in our society? Ezel, you want to take a shot at that question?
Sure, Joel. So, one thing I always talk about with my family and my colleagues at work, we're truly living in exciting times, right? The possibilities are endless, and it's always to an exponential level when it comes to Gen AI. And guys, like deep down, Gen AI is here to stay, and we should embrace it as a tool for like productivity, and just to enhance our day-to-day life and things of that sort. So, for example, I'll give you some of background, like from my experience, like as a developer prior to becoming a solutions architect. I usually back in the day, when you write code, usually you would go through a process of developing the code, thinking of the code, but then you would want to review that code with someone. So that could be a pretty cumbersome or long process. But with Gen AI now, makes it more easier to review it. You don't have to have like a senior person next to you if you want to like double check your code, or if you want to paste some of that code and just to try to understand a little bit about it. So it makes it more easier for like code reviews, and it makes it easier to basically explain something that's very complex, a function that you see you kind of don't understand. It can get you up to speed. So it's a powerful tool, and I personally call it like the intelligent sidekick, and I'm using it on a daily basis. Now back to your question, Joel, like about some of the use cases in the industry. There's a spectrum of industries that I see this being used a lot. When it comes to like customer service, healthcare, manufacturing. I'll give you an example. Like in the customer service industry, you see a lot of chat bots these days. They're all AI powered, right? So they handle customer inquiries, questions, and they provide some of a result or an output that would resolve a particular issue in real time. So I see a lot of Gen AI being used in that. Also, I see it in like virtual assistants, like applications where assistants like Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant, they some sort of use or manipulate some sort of LLM model in the background that can help in, like, for example, managing managing tasks on your phone. And I think this is going to be the trend, in the future. In healthcare, I see it in like medical imaging. We can generate imaging. You can do some drug discovery, for example. Potential use cases would be generating drug compounds, predicting their efficiency. You can feed that into the AI to generate that. And also another trend, and maybe my colleagues can talk about it a little bit more. I see it also in the educational industry, especially in tutoring. So like what I mentioned earlier, when it comes to writing code and having some sort of that output feedback, that generated feedback of whether you're trying to explain something. You can also use it in tutoring if you want to learn more about a particular subject, and that's how I use it. Like basically, if there's a particular subject that I don't understand, I would feed it into the prompt, like, hey, I'm trying to learn something. Just give it to me in layman terms, and then I would get that output result. If that subject is in particular very very complex. So that's something I'm noticing, and also since I've been working in the public sector, I see a lot of solutions like, for example, document processing systems where it uses RAG, retrieval augmented generations, on those documents to be processed and to gain some output from those documents that you have. Like you might have, let's say, thousands of documents, hundreds of pages, and you want to learn more. You want to do some analysis on those documents. So I see a trend in that a lot. So
Yeah, appreciate you for sharing that. I think you're spot on, right? In terms of it being utilized in the various industries that we see in our society, like I said, healthcare, finance, education, manufacturing, right? It can be implemented in a way where it makes individuals that work in those sectors life much, much easier, and it impacts your day-to-day productivity extremely, right? So I'll say plus one to that, man. It's a tool that we're using, but we sometimes lose the fact that other individuals in these other industries will definitely benefit from it. So plus one to yours. Uh, Speaking about how it's being utilized in the different industries here, how do we see the ethical considerations and how we can be responsible when utilizing it, right? The reason why I'd ask is sometimes there are concerns about obviously the privacy of our data being used to train, the intellectual properties of who has the right to these AI generated content, the biases and the fairness of these AI models. What would you say to this, Danielski, when it comes to ethical considerations and the responsible AI aspect of generative AI?
Sure, Joel. Yeah, whenever we do something in life, we have to be responsible, right? And then when you're responsible for something, you have to do things right, and also you have to face the consequences if you don't do them right, right? So Gen AI is not the exception to the rule. We have to apply responsible AI. There has to be some control. Something has to be managed, right? Otherwise, if it goes out of control, it's gonna be difficult, right? Like I said once before, I imagine when there's no responsibility, I imagine ourselves in the iRobot movie when one robot was capable of building another robot, and then that must have a problem, right? It could be catastrophic, and then humans will be in danger, to be honest. So responsible AI refers to the development of artificial intelligence and the use of it as well in ways that are ethical, also transparent, fair, and beneficial to the society, right? And when you talk about this, you have to talk about ethics, right? So you have to ensure that AI systems adhere to moral principles and respect human values, right? That's something that has to be considered. Also, in terms of fairness, it has to be fair, right? We have to avoid bias and discrimination in generative AI, and this has to happen when making decisions, right? In that process. Now, it has to be transparent as well. So we have to make AI systems understandable and explainable, right? So there has to be a way for people who are not deeply technical, to understand that this is something that is for the sake of humans, right? And it's to help them improve, right? Become better human beings, not to destroy them, right? So there has to be transparency in terms of that. Also, privacy is very important, especially when it comes to the cloud, right? So one of the blockers that many customers have and clients is that they don't want to leave their data in someone else's hands, right? So there has to be privacy. We don't touch your data. We have to protect your personal data. All your PII has to be protected. And also, we have to respect your privacy. That's very important. Now, when there's responsible AI, there has to be accountability. So someone has to be accountable. We have to establish clear responsibility for AI actions and decisions, right? We have to make that clear. Now it has to be safe, right? We have to design AI systems that are reliable, secure, right, and do not cause harm, right? Remember what I said before. It has to be for the sake of humans, right? Now there's some social impact with Gen AI. We have to consider the broader societal implications of AI deployment. So how it impacts society. All of this has to be considered. Now, human oversight, right? This has to be supervised. We have to maintain appropriate human control over AI systems. I know that the purpose of AI is to kind of reduce the human factor as much as possible so it can be automated, right? But humans they still have to control these systems. What I mentioned before, if it goes out of control, it can be catastrophic, right? Now, there's a concept of robustness, right? So we have to ensure that AI systems they perform consistently, right? And also reliably across different scenarios, right? Whether it is with LLMs or you using that in the business or you're using that in the website or across the board, there has to be a reliable and consistent performance, right? And last but not least, that it has to be sustainable, right? So we have to develop AI in a way that we consider the environmental impact, how sustainable we're being, right? And that's one of the 16 principles of leadership that Amazon advertises is you have to be sustainable, right? Sustainability, how much we are using, how many resources we are actually using and not wasting, right? And how our systems are cooperating, collaborating, and contributed to the betterment of our company and our clients. So that's all I have to say, Joe, about responsible AI. How do we can control this and the impact that we can have when this is supervised and managed. Back to you, Joel.
No, absolutely. No, that's some great insights there. I think I did see something recently where someone had mentioned that uh, the responsible AI side of things comes in play when it's not necessarily just utilizing these tools for the betterness of our society, but also having these tools do good for us, right? So it could be, I know this happened last year where there were strikes in the Hollywood space where actors and actresses were scared about the integration of Gen AI or just AI systems being integrated in their work and it taking over their day-to-day work. Uh, I saw an article that said that shouldn't be the concern at all, right? The concern is not there. People should embrace these systems and tools because they're going to impact and change your life. Yes, there is some concerns about it could be the data that you are ingesting as an input, but if you are, and again, this in this scenario, if you're an actress or you're an actor, you want these tools next to you, next to you or side by you, to improve your day-to-day work, right? I would I use generative AI in my day-to-day work all the time, whether it's for streamline my uh, thought of train, my approach to different solutions. It makes me much more effective and efficient in my day-to-day work. So whenever I get the question of, hey, is this something that I should be using based off the concerns that I have? I would say as long as we're all responsible when it comes to utilizing whatever things we have in society, right? When we're using a car, we got to be responsible, right? We get alliances for a reason. Like, I'm not going to give alliances to my 11-year-old cousin because it's accessible to them. No, we have to have them go through different steps to get to that point in life where they get alliances. And same thing, obviously, not the same thing with generative AI, but there are some guardrails that are set to make sure that we are all utilizing tools that does not impact our society. And I think responsible AI is a very key thing that everyone should be aware of, and everyone should always make sure they're adhering to.
Joe,
Uh,
Joe, Joe, there's always a small margin that something can go wrong. So whenever you do something in life, things can go wrong. So you have to plan for that, right? So if you don't have responsible AI, if you don't have people that are responsible and that gets out of control, it could be a problem. Like you said, Gen AI is powerful for the betterment. But I mean, for better it's very useful for all of us, right? I don't know if you guys have noticed in Amazon whenever you're gonna purchase something. I noticed something yesterday. I noticed that there's a little chat, but I don't
yeah,
know.
Rufus.
Yeah, yeah, Rufus. I noticed this yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw it before, right? So Rufus is there now. That's Gen AI, right? Basically, that's a chatbot that is there for you, and it's good for you because it just has an algorithm that kind of studies all your purchases, what you like, and then it suggests the products that you might purchase, right? So that's amazing, right? So that's something great. It's powerful, but that's when you use it for good, for good, right? But there's always people that have some sort of hate for good, right? Hate about good, and they don't like good things, and then go ahead and then just use whatever all the tools that we use for good can be used for bad, right? It's like security events, like all the tools that security people use, every single tool that they use to detect, prevent things, they can be used to hack and to destroy, right? And the
Absolutely.
same can happen with Gen AI, for sure.
So, speaking about security, there, I think it's a great segue for us to discuss how security comes in play with such tools like generative AI tools, products. Like you mentioned, right? You have Rufus, we have GPT, ChatGPT, you have all these platforms, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times we have access to all these platforms, right? Whether you're an avid generative AI person or you're not, the common layman or the common person knows about ChatGPT or they know about some of these generative AI features, models being implemented in their day-to-day work because it's just something that we see nowadays. Uh, with the increase in accessibility of it, I want to ask Evans this question: how do you see the security aspect and how impactful generative AI when it comes to the tools? And can you speak to more on the security side of it and how a lot of security experts are taking advantage of these tools and what they are utilizing these tools or these models to help in the security space?
Yeah, thank you very much, Joel, for that question. So obviously, like all of you mentioned, generative AI is, it is the buzzword today. Um, it increased productivity, it helps us in our day-to-day lives. And there are a lot of, it has become really more accessible, right, and user-friendly. Um, Previously, we thought that you needed a data science degree, right, to be able to operate. But with all of this AI platform now, with all of those tools that are available, right? Whether OpenAI or Google Cloud AI, it is available to the public, developers, people that are both technical or non-technical, can take advantage of all of that. But of course, like we mentioned, there are guardrails, right, that needs to be around this. And I understand, like you were mentioning, that a lot of people are kind of skeptical and are resisting this technology. But I believe that we need to focus on the benefit. And like everything in life, we know there is the good and the bad side, right? We use it for what is good, and then we take all of the precautions that we need, right, to be able to mitigate the bad side of it. So um, I know we have some challenges, right, when it comes to securing all of those AI models against misuse, right? Um, AI model misuse can manifest in various forms, right? People can use it to, for deceptive practices. They can use, uh, for unauthorized surveillance or data manipulation, data manipulations. But we need to develop the strategies, right, that allows us to monitor, right, and mitigate the misuse of that. And we have today a lot of tools. When you start building, let's say for example on AWS, when you build, there is something that is important to make sure that you have a good authentication system, right? That is very crucial, right, to give access to those who needs to have access to it. Now when you talk about language models, what you feed into the models is what you receive back. I know Dunieski mentioned about PII information. So if there are information that you don't want to go public, because most of the time, what are we afraid of is our data, our privacy. We want to keep them safe, right? So we need to know how we feed in, right, when we are prompting information to those models, and not feeding information that we do not want to be out there.
Yeah, great. I think from what you said, I 100% agree with all of it, right? I think when I think of the accessibility of these tools being available, not just to maybe specialized group of uh, data scientists or AI researchers and being accessible to everyone in our society, it's a great thing, right? But also when that comes in play, when it comes to security of things, you have to, when you're utilizing these tools to build applications, you have to make sure that you have security in mind when building the application. It could be, hey, I'm looking to build a chatbot that pulls in data from my knowledge base. It could be a rack application, like as I had mentioned, but you have to set guardrails to make sure that these models or these applications you're building does not go stray, or you're making sure that if you're utilizing endpoints for your models, it's not publicly shared, right? The security of it is super important, and I think a lot of times, I know we have some security folks on the call here. I know I've seen folks overlook security sometimes, and to me, like we say at AWS, security is job zero, right? You want to make sure that you're constantly taking your security practices and following best practices as much as possible. And it should be the first thing that you look at when it comes to anything that you do, whether it's building GenAI applications, when it comes to just building various different solutions. You want to make sure that each component of that solution that you're building is secured as possible. I think that's super important. And I think a lot of times when it comes to just building an application, again, whether it's GenAI or whatever, people overlook it. And it's a best practice to not overlook it. So
So
absolutely.
yeah, I wanted to add to that as well. Imagine that you are building an application that doesn't have GenAI, but you are including GenAI, right? Security has to be there from the beginning of of the software development cycle until the end, right? So sometimes mistakes are made, and people introduce security probably in the middle of the process or at the end, but just in the planification time, there has to be some stages, right? Whatever deployment or development framework you're using, or using not waterfall, or using agile, whatever you're using, there has to be a place for security from the very beginning, right? So you have to use your code in a way that doesn't expose keys or data that is important, right? And some cloud provider has developed tools that can protect the code, right? In this case, we have different tools like generate code for you and can protect the code, like Amazon Code Whisperer. That's an example, right? So this one, and you can share the code with this tool and ask the tool, hey, how can I improve my code? And it's
Or
gonna give you
Amazon Q for developer has of
right,
recently.
right. So it's gonna give you suggestions what you have to do for the code to be secure, right? If there are any gap or any breach of security or a potential breach of security, you're exposing something, right? There are tools in place. For example, when you push your code to a specific code repository, it will detect if there are credentials exposed, right? And then you have to do something about it real quickly to protect you. So generative AI is amazing, right? But it has to be managed, it has to be supervised, right? By a human, right? Even though a human is making this for this to work automatically, right? But there has to be some management and protection against that. So remember, if there's something that cannot be automated, it's security. Security shouldn't be automated, right? Because when you automate things, it gives you a false sense of security. Like it's automated, it's protected, right? And then you forget about it. No, there has to be people, and those people will not lose the job, right? There's a buzz that some people will lose their jobs because of Gen AI, right? But at least we can say that the people securing or responsible for Gen AI, they won't lose their job, right? Because it has to be controlled, it has to be managed.
And Dineski, I love your point about security is not like you don't only think about the automation part, but like even like the ethical side of it and the being like responsible, you have to be aware of all what you're doing, right? So I think it's more of like a cultural shift, even within the developers or whoever is developing that particular application. You have to put into like a plan where you might have to implement ML SecOps, right? If you have like a DevOps pipeline or things of that sort. So I think it's more of a cultural shift. So if you can include all of those things together, like responsible AI and security, I think
Yeah.
that can be very powerful. And
But
um,
that's what DevOps is actually, right? DevOps is a
yeah,
mindset. It's a culture mindset.
I
yeah,
would say
You
I would say
bring
DevSecOps because we
there's a
want
cops
to
as well,
uh,
right,
including
introduce
security,
security. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So you bring in the gap close, right, between security, operations, and development, right? You
yeah,
bring them together, and then they're like a massive force that will work right? If, like I said, if you supervise it and control it, right?
and I think
So
in all application that we build nowadays, that should be the process, the best practice, right? Like you mentioned, from the software development life cycle, right from the beginning, we incorporate security at every stage. That way, we make sure that we build secure applications. Um, yeah, so
I
yeah,
love the fact that this conversation has turned from Gen AI to security. I think in any scenario, any conversation, security is again number one thing at job zero where conversations usually would and literally turn to security to make sure that we address security first before we come back on that pipeline of whatever we're doing. So I
Joe,
think this is actually going to be our conversation next week or the following week after that. I
right,
love the
right.
security conversation.
Yeah, it's like you
yeah,
said, security is important. I'm giving you my data, right? I'm giving you my data, all my personal, geographical, personal, really identifiable information, whatever. My demographic, DI, right? Everything I'm giving it to you. You have to protect it.
yeah,
Otherwise, how can I trust you, right? How can I trust you as my cloud provider? So we're talking about the cloud, right?
yeah.
So I am giving you everything, right? All of my data, all of my workloads, all of my components, everything that I have, I'm putting it in your hands, right? And you have to protect it. Otherwise, I'm sorry, but I'm not paying you, right? So I'm a paying customer, and that's what clients are doing with different cloud providers, AWS, Amazon, and Oracle, Google, right? They're putting their data, all their information, in the hands of the cloud provider, right? And then
yeah,
you have to protect it.
And Dineski, I love that point as well because it's usually like a shared responsibility, right? Like not
Right.
only are you giving the data to let's say a particular cloud provider or even your own infrastructure, right? But as well, it's more of a responsibility between you as like the owner, the developer. You have to encrypt your data, right? You have to encrypt it at rest and during transit, as well as you have to have those safeguards in place so you
Right.
don't have like people that can access that data. You have to place those safeguards, so you have to utilize the tools that are available, those security tools, and that's the main key. So it's a shared responsibility.
Yeah. Sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I love again, like I said, I love the fact that conversations like this usually turns into a security conversation because again, it's something that is job zero and something that should be addressed at the beginning stage and not something that is looked at the end and it says, hey, are we securing this to our best capability? No, you have to look at it as a job zero thing, take security as the first thing that an organization or as an individual that you want to have implemented from the jump.
But
Uh,
Joe, before we I know we going towards the end of this conversation, but I know there are probably some technical people out there who would like to know why we are talking about Gen AI. If they want to start with Gen AI, where do they start, right? How do they start building, their Gen AI application? I think we should address that before we close.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Sure.
I
Sure.
was I was gonna do a couple more questions. I know we usually have set this for about 40-45 minutes per episode. And I think this episode has been great so far. Before we even leave, we're gonna make sure that we've shared resources that we personally use, but also what we see in the space folks use. I have one final question that I want to make sure that the teams factor in their opinion about. Uh, I would say, how do you as an essay utilize generative AI tools or generative AI in general to improve your productivity? It could be you utilizing it to automate your routine task, enhancing your creativity, solving problem much faster. How are you in now in your day-to-day work utilizing generative AI to improve your productivity? Anyone can take this.
Joe, I could take it, Joe. Let me tell you something. I develop and react a lot, right? And as soon as I knew about Code Whisperer, well, it's
Amazon
established
Q
that
for Glover.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So these guys, they and you're right. It's called now Amazon Q for developer. Right. So that guy can give you suggestions about your code that you can reduce your time, but maybe 50% and maybe more, right? So that's crazy, right? Let's say give me a function, for example, just a simple example. Give me a function, a lambda function that can upload objects or files in S3, right? And it immediately, as soon as you hit enter, it gives you the function, right? And that's amazing, right? And also it kind of learns as you go, and when you code, it just completes your line of code. So I'm talking about another use case. I'm not asking for a lambda function now. I'm just coding, and all of a sudden it gives me suggestions, and I can complete my code by hitting tab. Right? That's amazing, right? Imagine how fast you can do that. Let's start writing an object in React, for example, and then as you start writing the first word, it boom gives you the object with all the properties of that object. So that's amazing, right? You can have that with React. In other languages, depending, I created code with Python as well. You just have to have um, a file that ends in .py, I'm sorry, which is the Python extension, and it recognizes the file and the language, and it gives you suggestions about that. So that will be Amazon Q for Developer. It's powerful. It's
And
powerful.
and, and,
So
and I will share mine as well. So um I, as an essay, I do a lot of meetings. I meet a lot with my customers, right?
yeah,
And usually, sometimes you cannot be on all of your meetings. Sometimes you have to attend to other customers and you miss some meetings. So I use a Gen AI to be able to summarize meetings for me a lot, right? So one thing that I do, usually, I get my meetings recorded, and then I can take it through a GenAI process that actually transcribe the meeting for me and give me an action item, right, from the meeting, right? That way, it helped me go faster and be able to attend to my customers. So summarization is something that is great that I think that many people are taking advantage of today.
I'll say plus one to that too, man. It's the best use case of Gen AI that's out there where a lot of people are in many calls all the time, right? You jump in meetings, several meetings back to back to back, and usually in those meetings you have to be active. And being active means that you're not either taking notes or jotting down anything that someone might say that you really need to jot down. So the use case of what Evans is mentioning here, where you're essentially recording those calls, or even if it's live, you have a streaming data or a streaming video that's coming in, it's transcribing it, then you send it to generative AI, or in this case, I'm assuming even you're using Bedrock and
Bedrock.
one of those models to summarize those transcriptions of those call and give it the final output of what those look like. It's amazing. I personally do this as well, where I can be on a call, and if it's a call that we want to record and want to share the readout after, I would say, hey, let's record this call. Let generative AI in its background do its work, and it's amazing the work that it can
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, but Joe, you got to be careful, right, with something. Because if I do when I'm working, if I have a document, let's say that it has 20 pages, and I want to summarize it in only one, so that's amazing, right? I can use Bedrock for that, and LLM, Claude 3, Sonnet, whatever I use, boom, it summarizes for me. But what if I am in the university and my teacher assigns me to summarize a document, right, or a literary piece of work, right, and then I use Gen AI, I'm cheating, right?
That's why we are talking about responsible AI. That's
Yeah.
that's the,
Yeah,
one of the
yeah.
misuse of.
But how can you ask someone that is 15, 16, 17 years old to be responsible, right? So it's a double-edged sword, right? So that's when parents comes in, and then parents come in, right, to
and,
teach your child, right?
And I think
Right.
that's why even in technology, with most of the devices that we hand to our children, we have parental controls, right? So parent needs to step in at that, on that, and be able to monitor to make sure that kids do not misuse Gen AI, right? Like we
Yeah.
said, there is the good and the bad. We need to be aware of that, as this is something, a trend going on now. People need to be aware, especially parents, to make sure that that side, the kids can learn effectively and use it in
So it's
class
kind
like
of
you mentioned.
I want to have a device that tells me if my child is using Gen AI. So whenever there's a Gen AI concept or context, ping me, and I would go to my child and say, what are you doing? I want to know what you're using Gen AI for. Okay, so be careful, right?
Yeah, and guys, these are like pretty interesting use cases. Like for me personally, as an SA, I take a lot of courses, right? And I take a lot of notes, and usually my notes would be like on a particular, let's say, service or whatever it is. So I would have like pages and pages of documentation. So sometimes, my grammar is not is not the best. My English isn't the best. So I would use like a Claude model, for example, to kind of summarize that, or try to make some bullet points to some of the stuff that I wrote probably weeks and weeks ago and days ago, and then just have it in more of a consistent format. And it's very productive for me personally, and I can even share that to other people, other essays that they can make use of it. So this
Yeah,
is one of the goods of Gen AIs I would consider.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, this is great. This has been a great conversation. I think the last thing we want to leave everyone on the call here is some resources, right? I know we did mention that there are some tools that in the industry are very standard, where it's your chat GPTs, your you're directly going on Claude's website or from Anthropics. Uh, there's so many out there, but a lot of times these are you actually prompting these models and not really building anything. I think uh, there's a lot of folks that don't really know of a way to get started on when it comes to building generative AI application. So there's this tool called Party Rock.aws where I personally build a lot of application that can help me be very proactive, productive. And I would say if anyone on this call here or anyone that watches this video after wants to get started when it comes to building generative AI applications, go to this website, partyrock.aws. It gives you a great way to quickly build an application to do whatever you pretty much want it to do, right? You can have, as of right now, it doesn't have context to like you would for a RAG application, but it does everything else that you typically would have in a standard generative AI application.
Yeah, if you want to
So
know, what your name means, like for example, Joel or Izo or Evans or Dunieski. Well, Dunieski doesn't mean anything, but if you want to know what your name means, you can use Spotty Rock. That's what I knew when I was thinking about my daughter, how we'll name her. I just looked for the meaning of my name, her name here, and it's just gave me a very pretty and decent explanation of what her name means. And by the way, we have a question in the chat
yes,
from Spencer's. Is there a way to enforce guardrails for GenAI workloads in AWS? For example, setting a company-wide policy to require certain restrictions like not using PII data for training. Oh, Spencer, I want to tell you, stay tuned. We're bringing a specialist in security when it comes to GenAI, and we're gonna ask him some questions about this for sure.
yeah. Now this is a great question. I'm trying to think here in terms of setting company-wide policy to restrict certain like things like PI data from being trained.
You can
Uh,
probably like redirect it, right? Or kind of
but
mask the PII data, is if I understood correctly.
yeah, I think it depends. Is
Yeah.
it being trained? And this is sort of me diving into my essay brain here, where it's like you asking follow-up questions to get the clarification here. Is this being done? Obviously, you're building these what? You're building these workloads via SageMaker, or you're doing this via Bedrock, right? That's the question that I would ask, because if that's the case, my thoughts are like guardrails or different ways we can do this in
Yeah, yeah,
SageMaker through domain. So
yeah. So when you say policy, that is security, right?
yeah.
And we were talking about security before, right? But we don't want to dive deep into security because we have another session when we're gonna dive deep into that,
So
right? But there's
I
way
guess
there are ways to control this, right? So we have if we're talking about AWS, we have control tower, we have landing zones, we have service control policies that you can use to control at a company level, right? At an organization's level, when you have multiple um, member accounts, right? So there are multiple ways that you can restrict that.
I
Uh,
speaking
yeah,
of cloud control tower, I think there was a new feature in control tower. I think I saw this one day. Was it a few this week where there is a SCP where you're able to control what workloads are spinned up in your account related to generative AI. I think
hmm
I saw this recently. I got to double check. But Spencer, if you're here next week, I'll answer that question once I look into it.
right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but for sure, like the Juniorski mentioned, you can apply those now wide policies at the organization levels to member account. Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah,
that's
I,
short that.
I think that's an SCP. I think I've seen it. There's an SCP in in an organization that lets you, just like you have SCPs for various things. There's an SCP that is
yeah,
a
yeah.
that you can attach to an organization.
So remember the past, Joe, when we worked with AWS Glue, how we were able to kind of redact PII when working
Yep.
with Glue. Remember? So
Yep.
same we can do. We can enforce this with security guardrails and at the organization's level, right? We're using service control policies. So there's way to detect PII, right? So we know that we can detect PII in object storage. We know that there are ways that you can have that, and there are are detective tools that we can use to kind of know if there's some social security number out there, or there's some telephone numbers, or maybe an address of a user and user. In that way, we can use GenAI responsibly, right?
Right.
But
And I
yeah,
think
go.
in upcoming session we will share resource
Yeah,
list too,
sure, sure,
with Spencer about that.
Absolutely.
right,
Absolutely.
right.
Awesome. Well, Spencer, great question. I think I'm going to double check myself. I'm curious now to go check now because I did see it somewhere, but I didn't really pay attention because it's something that I think was very new and added to Control Tower. But I'll double check on that. But also, like we said, we're going to bring someone that's specific. Their day job specifically is security and how they see security in the world of Gen AI. So we're gonna do that too as well, and have those conversations in this podcast
Yeah,
as we go
yeah,
down the
Joe.
line.
Joe, I think it's a good time now to kind of set the expectations for the next meetings that we're gonna have, next sessions, right?
Absolutely. Well,
It's not gonna be only conversations, right? We're gonna bring some practical stuff as well, right?
absolutely, yeah. Before I get into that, I think again, I want to leave everyone here with the Party Rock. Go play around with it. If you've not seen this, it's a massive hit. Definitely take advantage of utilizing this tool to get started with building this. Uh, I think it's a great thing to folks that have not seen generative AI in the sense of how to build these applications. But yeah, absolutely take advantage of it. Uh, let's set expectations for moving forward. Like Danielski said, we want to make this a recurrent event where we come on here, we share our insights, we share our thoughts on different domains, different topics, different services, different technologies, you name it, right? Our goal is to educate, and our goal is to build and foster a community where we here has the tech, right? We're able to share our thoughts on different things we see in our day jobs, also things we see in our personal life when it comes to the world of tech. So the expectation is we're going to be going live every Fridays, sometime after 6:30. So if it's not 6:30 EST, sometime after 6:30 EST, this is going to be going live as of right now on our YouTube channel, our YouTube page. So the folks that are on our YouTube page, thank you for tuning in. But also, we're going to go live on our LinkedIn page. As of right now, we are at the limitations of LinkedIn because LinkedIn restrict us to only stream when we're at 150 viewers or 150 followers, and we're very close. Even though we're at 20 followers, we're going to build on top of that.
Yep.
But as of right now, we're going to be streaming on LinkedIn amongst ourselves. We're going to be going live on Danieski's LinkedIn profile. We're going to go live on my profile. We're going to go live on Ezra's profile and Evan's profile. Till we get to the point where we get that 150, where we're able to actually stream on our official The Tech Show LinkedIn page. So again, the expectation has been set. Hold us to account. Please hold us to account and hold us accountable, because we did this last year and it kind of fell off, but we've made the promise to our community. I know we have a substantial amount of followers on YouTube. We want to make it up to you guys by going live all the time. The other expectation I want to make is not only we're going to be discussing the various topics, we're going to be actually doing demos on how some of these things work. So Spencer had a great question of guardrails with GenAI workloads. We are going to be doing demos that shows individuals how to quickly build applications, how to quickly utilize a specific service, how to quickly spin up things, all those things. We're going to be doing it throughout this podcast, right? Since it's a video podcast and not necessarily an audio podcast, you can actually visualize what we're doing. But additional thing we're going to be doing is we're going to bring in specialists and individuals that are in their space. So individuals that are specialized in their different domains, different topics. Like we had mentioned, we're going to bring in a specialist for a generative AI with security. We're going to bring all these individuals to come chat about the things they see in those domains to give a SME insights or an SME perspective. So
And we're gonna get
again,
our hands dirty with
oh yeah,
demos, right?
yes, yes, sir.
We're gonna show, not only speak, we're gonna show too, right?
Oh yeah.
Very
Yeah,
important.
we just don't want to talk about the theory of it. Just like how when you're studying for something, you only study the theory. You want to actually look at how it actually works, and this is where the hands-on part of it comes on. So you're gonna watch us navigate you guys through the process of spinning up various different things, whether it's features, workloads, how certain services work, and again, we help you understand certain things much better. And again, if there is any request, if there's something you're like, hey, I want you guys to talk about this in an upcoming podcast or upcoming stream, feel free to message us, right? Let us know. We are community first individuals. We love to hear what the community has to say, and we take those information and those feedback at heart, and we actually implement it. Because this us coming back was one of our community members saying you have to come back. We're not going to come back till that was mentioned. So please do share your thoughts, your feedback. It's very appreciated, and we really and truly appreciate whoever listens to our podcast.
I guess you could say consider us as a training model, right?
Absolutely.
We're a training model.
We are a training model. I would say, yeah, we're a training model, and each of us, the show itself is a training model, and each of us are fine tuning that model of the show.
I like that. I
Ah,
like that.
You like
and
that
we
spin?
are, and we're
Yeah.
generating content as well. So
Yeah.
good.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Well, is there any final words or departing statements that we want to leave the folks here with?
Oh, I think we had a great session, a great introduction today, and like we mentioned, I think they should stay tuned for the next sessions. A lot of things coming up, and then come with your questions, and then yeah, we
Just
are
this
here
is
to share
just
with you.
this is just the tip of the iceberg,
Yes.
right?
Ezo,
That's what it
any
is.
final departing words?
I think this is exciting. Just stay tuned. If you guys have any topics you guys want to learn more about, just let us know. And all of you guys have an awesome weekend.
So we're
Awesome. Well,
gonna talk about databases, compute, storage, Gen AI, everything, right? I'm
yes,
pretty excited.
we're gonna
I'm pretty
the whole
excited,
nine
right?
yards, the whole 9 yards,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. Sure.
99 yards, the whole thing, the whole shebang, right? We're gonna
And
we're gonna be doing everything.
I live by example.
We-
Whatever we talk about, we're gonna demo, right?
Yeah,
Nice.
So I guess the next
we'll
thing we're
bring
gonna
it
do
on.
is how to
I like it already.
build GenAI. I guess we're doing that next. I guess you heard it here, folks. We're going to be doing something that's related to this conversation we have spoken about today and how to actually implement what we had discussed in an actual application. And we might actually demo Party Rock. I think it's a great way for people to get started. So we might start off from there and look into other ways that you can actually spin up workloads in your console itself. The only thing I have left to say is, again, make sure to follow us on different platforms, right? Whether it's our LinkedIn page, our YouTube channel, please make sure to go follow, subscribe, like our content, and leave any comment, or just if there's anything specifically you're like, hey guys, I want you guys to cover this. Again, reach out to us, reach out to them, right? Reach out to all of us. We're here for the community, like I mentioned. But with that being said, we're gonna depart and leave you guys with a great song, and I would say have a great weekend.
Have a great
Happy
weekend.
4th of July, because we're not going to be live till next week. Have a happy 4th of July, and celebrate and have fun. Thank you all.